Chapter 14-15.
Refinement-Part for 5.
Elaine Wanji did not look at Wei Wuxian. He nodded to indicate respect and
Spoke in a monotonous voice. First, liberate. Second, suppress.
third, eliminate. The initial approach is to utilize the gratitude of his relatives and grant.
His dying wish. Set free what he could not let go of.
If it fails, suppress it.
If the crimes were extremely wrongful,
And its energy of resentment does not dissipate, exterminate it completely. The cultivation world should precisely keep to this order of measures.
no errors should be allowed. Everyone let out a long breath, thanking the heavens because,
Elaine Wanji was the one the old man selected.
else, if it was their turn,
It would be hard to not overlook a few steps or mix up the order.
Elaine Chirin nodded with satisfaction. Not a single mistake was made. With a pause, he spoke again. No matter in terms of cultivation, or as a person, one needs to be as solid as this. If one becomes complacent and proud just because they defeated a few simple mountain beings in their home and hold some empty reputations,
One would definitely bring disgrace upon themselves, sooner or later.
Wei Wuxian raised his brows and took a look at the side of Elaine Wanji's face.
He thought, so, apparently this old man meant it for me.
He called his best pupil to listen with us in order for me to watch. He spoke. I have a question.
Elaine Chirin replied, Speak.
Wei Wuxian, although liberation comes first, it is often impossible.
To grant his dying wish sounds simple, it would be easy.
If the wish was a new piece of clothing, but what if the wish was to kill lots of people for revenge?
Elaine Wanji. Thus, suppression assists liberation.
If it is necessary, elimination would also follow.
Wei Wuxian smiled. Such a waste. He paused, and continued.
It wasn't that I didn't know of this answer.
I was only thinking of a fourth path.
Elaine Chirin spoke. I have never heard of any fourth paths. Wei Wuxian spoke. Because the executioner died in such a way, it is only natural that he turned into a ferocious corpse. Since he executed more than 100 people before he died,
Why not dig up the graves of these people, arouse their energy of resentment,
collect the heads of those 100 people,
and use them to fight with the ferocious corpse? Elaine Wanji finally turned around to look at him.
His brows were knit, still expressionless. Elaine Chirin was so angered that his goatee was quivering. He shouted, How dare you? Everyone in the room was stunned.
Elaine Chirin sprang to his feet. The essence of exorcising demons and annihilating ghosts is to liberate.
You do not study the methods of liberation,
And even think about increasing their energy of resentment.
you reverse the natural order, and ignore ethics and morality. Wei Wuxian replied, There are some things that have no use after liberation.
So why not find a way to make use of them?
When you the great tamed the flood, obstruction was the inferior method, and redirection was the superior.
Suppression is the same as obstruction, so isn't it inferior? Elaine Chirin hurled a book toward him, but he flinched to the side and avoided it,
His expression remained unchanged.
and continued to talk nonsense. Spiritual energy is energy.
Resentful energy is energy as well. Spiritual energy is stored in the dantian. It can split mountains and fill oceans, available for human use.
If so, then why can't resentful energy also be used by humans?
Another book came flying from Elaine Chirin. He spoke harshly. Then, let me ask you again. How do you make sure that the resentful energy only listens to you and does not harm others? Wei Wuxian napped while speaking. I haven't thought of it yet. Elaine Chirin raged. If you thought of it,
The cultivation world would not allow your existence. Get out.
Wei Wuxian couldn't be more glad, and quickly went out.
He wandered about the cloud recesses for the morning, picking flowers and playing with grasses. After everyone finished the lesson,
They finally found him on the roof of a tall wall.
Wei Wuxian was sitting
On the grey tiles of the ledge, holding a piece of grass in his mouth.
His right hand was under his cheek, and sat with one leg propped up and the other hanging down, swaying slightly. The disciples down there pointed at him. Wei Xiong.
How admirable of you. He told you to get out, and you really went outside. Ha ha ha. After you went out, a long while passed before he finally understood. What happened? His face was so purple. Wei Wuxian chewed on the grass and shouted toward below him.
He asks, and I answer. If he tells me to get out, I will get out. What else does he want me to do?
Enai Huaizong spoke. Why does it seem like old man Elaine is especially strict towards you?
He always directs his scoldings at you. Jiang Cheng humphed. It serves him right. What sort of answer is that?
It's fine if he spouts these nonsense at home, but he dared to say these in
front of Elaine cheering.
He's seeking his own death. Wei Wuxian spoke. No matter how I answered it, he wouldn't like me, so I might as well just say what I wanted to say.
Anyways, I didn't try to offend him. I was just answering properly.
After thinking for a few moments, an expression of envy and yearning appeared on Enai Huizhen's face. To be honest,
Wei Xiong's words were quite interesting. Spiritual energy can only be obtained through cultivation and taking great pains to form a golden core.
it would take I don't know how many years to do, especially for someone
Like me, whose talent seems as if it
was gnawed by a dog when I was in my mother's womb. But resentful energy are from the fierce ghosts. If they can easily be taken and used, it would be beyond wonderful. A golden core was a core formed by cultivators after they had cultivated.
to a certain point. It can store and control spiritual energy.
After the core was formed, the cultivator's level of cultivation would increase at a rapid speed and become better and better.
Else, they would only be a low-end cultivator. If disciple from a prominent clan forms the core at a later age, it would be a disgrace to
Tell other people of it. Yet Enai Huaizhang didn't feel ashamed at all. Wei Wuxian also laughed. I know, right?
No harm comes from using it. Jiang Cheng warned, that's enough.
It's fine if you talk about it.
But don't actually walk such a crooked path.
Wei Wuxian smiled. Why would I leave the nice, broad road and walk on a single plank bridge on a dark, narrow river instead?
If it really is that easy, people would have already walked on it.
Don't worry, he was just asking, and I was just answering.
Hey, are you guys coming? Since it's not curfew yet, hunt for pheasants with me. Jiang Cheng scolded. What do you mean hunt for pheasants?
Why would there be pheasants here?
First, go copy righteousness.
Elaine Chiron asked me to tell you to copy the virtue section of
Righteousness for 3 times.
so that you can learn what natural law and morality is.
Righteousness was the collection of the LAN sect rules. The sect rules here was too long.
So Elaine Chiron revised them into a thick collection. The sections virtue and conduct were a fifth of the whole book. Wei Wuxian spat out the grass which he held in his mouth and dusted his boots. 3 times? I'd fly up to heaven if I just copied them once.
I'm not from the LAN sect, and don't intend to marry into the LAN clan.
So why should I copy the sect rules of his sect?
I'm not gonna copy.
Enai Huaizhan quickly spoke. I'll copy for you. I'll copy for you. Wei Wuxian. No good person does favors for others out of the blue.
Tell me, what do you want me to do?
Enai Huaizhan replied. It's like this.
Wei Xiong, old man LAN has a bad habit. In the middle of his sentence, he suddenly paused and coughed dryly, opening up his fan and shifting to the side.
Wei Wuxian knew that something was wrong. He turned around, and sure enough, Elaine Wangi stood under an ancient,
verdant tree and gazed in their direction, carrying the bitching sword.
on his back.
He looked like a jade tree, reflecting the mottled shadows of leaves and sunlight.
However, his stare wasn't kind at all, as if it could lock them in a cavern.
Made of ice,
Everyone knew that their shouts were a bit too loud,
and the noise had probably led him over, so they all shut their mouths.
yet Wei Wuxian jumped down and gravitated toward him. Wang Jixiong.
Elaine Wangi turned around and immediately walked away.
Wei Wuxian cheerfully went after him and yelled, Wang Jixiong, wait for me.
The white-clothed figure flashed behind the tree and suddenly disappeared without a trace, clearly showing that Elaine Wangi
Didn't want to converse with him. Having received only a view from behind, Wei Wuxian turned around and complained to the others. He ignored me. Yeah, Enai Huaizhang spoke. It looks like he really hates you, Wei Xiong.
Elaine Wangi usually.
No, he never does something so impolite. Wei Wuxian, he hates me already.
I wanted to apologize to him. Jiang Cheng sneered, apologizing now.
Too late. Like his uncle, he surely thinks that you are evil and unruly to the core, and he didn't bother to pay you any attention. Wei Wuxian thought otherwise. He chuckled. Who cares if he ignored me?
Does he look pretty? After a thought, he realized that Elaine Wangi did look pretty, and so he happily threw away his desire to twitch his lips.
Only after 3 days did Wei Wuxian finally know of Elaine Chian's bad habit.
Elaine Chian's lessons were not only tediously long, but everything was also tested on.
The generation or changes of important plants in the cultivation world,
The division of their areas of power.
famous quotes by famous cultivators, family trees, although he didn't understand a single bit as he listened in class.
Enai Huaizhang worked as hard as a slave when the date of the test approached. He copied virtue to times for Wei Wuxian and begged before the test. Please, Wei Xiong, if my grade is lower than Yi, my brother would really break my legs.
Stuff like telling apart direct lineage, collateral lineage, main clan branches.
For us disciples from big clans, we can't even distinguish our relationships with our own relatives.
Randomly calling everyone who are more than 2 tiers away from us
Aunts and uncles.
Does anyone have enough capacity in their brain to remember those of other clans? As a result of cheating notes flying everywhere in the air, Lan Wangji suddenly attacked during the test and caught a few initiators of the commotion.
Lan Qiren exploded with anger, writing letters to the prominent clans to tell on them. He loathed Wei Wuxian in the beginning, although these disciples could hardly sit still.
At least nobody started anything, and their buttocks were able to stick to their legs. However, now that Wei Ying came, the originally spineless brats were
influenced by his encouragement,
venturing out at night and drinking alcohol however they pleased.
The unhealthy practices grew greater and greater.
As he had expected,
Wei Ying was one of the biggest threats to humanity. Jiang Fengyan replied, Ying has always been like this. Please take care to discipline him, Mr. Lan. And so, Wei Wuxian was punished again.
At first, he didn't think too much of it. It was only copying texts,
and he never lacked people who copied for him. Yet, this time, Enai Huaizong spoke. Wei Xiong, even if I want to help you,
I can't anymore.
You'd have to endure it on your own.
Wei Wuxian asked, what happened? Enai Huaizong, old
Mr. Lan said that you have to copy both virtue and conduct. Conduct was the most complicated section of the 12 sections in
the Lan sect rules. It cited a lot of classics, was terribly long,
and had a lot of rarely used characters. Copy it 1 time, and one would lose all interest in life. Copy it 10 times, and one would fly to heaven on the spot. Enai Huaizong added. He also said that, during the time of the punishment,
nobody is allowed to fool around with you or copy them for you. Wei Wuxian wondered, how would he know if someone copied them for me or not?
Surely it doesn't mean that he's making someone watch me. Jiang Cheng spoke. That's exactly the case.
Wei Wuxian spoke. What did you say? Jiang Cheng, he told you that you're not allowed to go outside and have to go to the library pavilion to copy, and also face the wall and reflect
upon your mistakes.
Of course, there will be someone to watch you. I don't need to tell you who he is, do I?
Inside the library pavilion, there was 1 bamboo seat, 1 wooden desk, 2 candlesticks, and 2 people. One sat in a proper position, but on the other side.
Wei Wuxian had already copied conduct for more than 10 pages.
His head felt dizzy and his heart felt bored.
So he dropped his pen to take a breath and looked across. When he was still in Yanming, there were a lot of girls who envied that he
could come and study with Lan Wangji. They said that each generation was full of nice-looking men, especially the brothers part of the 2 jades in the current generation.
Before this, Wei Wuxian never had the chance to carefully examine the front of his face. Now that he had a look at it, he started to think random thoughts. He looks quite nice indeed.
Yet, if only those girls could come and see him with their own eyes.
Looking as bitter as if everyone had offended him or his parents died.
It wouldn't matter no matter how nice his face looks. Lan Wangji was recopying ancient books,
which were not only old, but also unavailable to most others.
In the Lan Sect's library pavilion,
his brushstrokes were slow and steady, and his handwriting was neat, yet sharply vigorous. Wei Wuxian couldn't help but to compliment him sincerely. Those are some great characters. They're of the top level.
Lan Wangji remained indifferent. Wei Wuxian rarely kept his mouth shut for such a long amount of time. Feeling suffocated, he thought, I have to sit in front of such a stuffy person for so many hours each day, for a month. Would I even survive? At this point of thought,
he couldn't help but slightly tilted his body forward. Wei Wuxian was someone who was skilled at finding fun for himself, especially talented in the area of seeking joy amid dull circumstances.
Since there wasn't anything else to play with,
he could only play with Lan Wangji. He called Wangji Xiong.
Lan Wangji remained motionless.
Wei Wuxian, Wangji.
He appeared as if he didn't hear anything.
Wei Wuxian, Lan Wangji. Wei Wuxian, Lan Zhan.
Lan Wangji finally stopped writing and looked up at him with a cold gaze.
Wei Wuxian shifted backward, raising his hands as if he was defending himself. Don't look at me like this. I only called your name because you didn't answer when I called you.
Wangji.
If you're upset, you can also call me back with my name.
Lan Wangji spoke. Put your legs down.
Wei Wuxian's sitting posture was extremely improper, with a slanted
body and legs propped up.
Seeing that he finally teased La and Wangji to the point that he started to talk, the former silently chuckled to himself, as if he finally saw the clouds disperse and the moon appear.
Listening to La and Wangji's words, he put his legs down, but his upper body
inched unnoticeably closer, and he pressed his arms onto the desk.
It was still an unacceptable sitting posture. He asked in a serious tone, La and Jean,
"Let me ask you a question.
do you really hate me that much?" La and Wangji looked down, his lashes casting light shadows onto his jade-like cheeks.
Wei Wuxin hurriedly added, "Hey, don't be like this, ignoring me again after saying so few words. I want to admit my fault and apologize to you."
Look at me.
After a pause, he spoke again. "You don't want to look at me?
Sure then, I'll just start talking. It was my fault during that night. I was wrong. I shouldn't have climbed the wall. I shouldn't have drank alcohol.
And I shouldn't have fought with you. But I swear,
it wasn't that. I provoked you on purpose. I really didn't look at the sect rules. The sect rules in the Jiang sect are all told verbally. None of them are written down.
Or else, I definitely wouldn't have done that. I definitely wouldn't have finished the jar of Emperor's Smile in front of you. I would have tucked it away and carried it back into my room secretly, drinking it every day and sharing it with everyone until we all had enough." Wei Wuxin continued, "And let's be reasonable, which of us attacked?
Fast. It was you. If you did attack, we could communicate it nicely
And cleared everything up. However, if someone hits me,
I'd have to hit them back. This isn't all my fault.
Elian Jean, are you listening?
Look at me.
Young Master Elian." He snapped his fingers. "Second brother Elian.
Why don't you do me a favor and look at me?" La&, Wangji didn't even lift his eyes. Copy it one additional time.
Wei Wuxin's body immediately slanted. "Don't be like this. It's my fault, all right."
La&, Wangji exposed his lie mercilessly. "You do not feel any remorse?"
Wei Wuxin spoke as if he didn't have any dignity. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry."
I can repeat it however many times you want me to. I can even say it while kneeling down."
La&, Wangji put his brush down.
Wei Wuxian thought that the other couldn't endure it any longer and finally wanted to beat him up. Just as he got ready to put on a goofy grin, he discovered that his upper and lower lips seemed like they were glued together,
so he couldn't laugh.
His face quickly changed. He struggled to talk. MMPH.
MMPH, MMPH, MMPH. La&, Wangji closed his eyes and let out a faint breath of air.
When he opened his eyes, the calm expression returned again. He picked up the brush again, as if nothing had happened. Wei Wuxian had been aware of the hated silencing spell of the La sect
since long ago, and he refused to believe it.
Yet, after making every
effort, scratching the corners of his lips red,
he still couldn't open his mouth no matter what.
And so, he grabbed a piece of paper, wrote as if his brush was flying, and threw the paper over. La&, Wangji glanced at it. "Pathetic," he responded, crumpling it into a ball and tossing it away.
Wei Wuxian was so angry that he rolled around on the mat, climbed up,
and wrote another one, slamming it in front of La&, Wangji. Again, it was crumpled into a ball and tossed away.
The silencing spell was only removed after he finished copying.
The second day, when he came to the library pavilion again, the balls of paper which landed everywhere were all taken out.
Wei Wuxian had always forgot about the pain after the cut healed.
Although, on the first day, he suffered greatly from the silencing spell. After a few moments, his mouth started to itch again. After recklessly speaking a few times, he was silenced once more.
He couldn't open his mouth, so he scribbled on paper and pushed them to La&, Wangji, who crumpled it and threw it onto the ground.
The same thing happened on the third day. He was silenced time after time. However, on the last day of him
having to face the wall and reflect, La&, Wangji noticed that
Wei Wuxian seemed somewhat different.
During his stay at Yusu, he left his sword all around the place and was never seen carrying it properly. Yet, he took it with him today, loudly slamming it onto the desk. He even went as far as to start writing without a word,
contrasting his usual behavior of relentlessly harassing La&, Wangji in every way possible. He was so obedient that it was strange. La&, Wangji didn't have a reason to silence him, so he took a few more glances at him as if he didn't believe
that Wei Wuxian was finally willing to behave himself.
As he had expected, after a short while of sitting down,
Wei Wuxian repeated his past conduct again, giving La&, Wangji a piece of paper for him to see.
La&, Wangji originally thought that it was going to be a mess of lame
phrases again, but after a coincidental glimpse,
He was surprised to find the drawing of a person, sitting upright and reading by the window.
with a vividly realistic expression on his face.
It was himself,
Seeing that he didn't avert his gaze at once, Wei Wuxian curled his lips.
and raised his eyebrow with a wink.
No words were needed.
Since the meaning was plain to see, does it look like you? Is it good? Lan Wangji slowly spoke. You have spare time, yet you scribble instead.
Of copy the text. In my opinion,
The day of your release from this punishment will never come.
Wei Wuxian blew on the ink which hadn't dried yet and spoke nonchalantly. I already finished copying, so I won't be coming tomorrow.
Lan Wangji's slender fingers seemed to have paused.
Before flipping over the next yellow-tinted page,
Surprisingly, Wei Wuxian wasn't silenced, as he didn't provoke any reaction.
Wei Wuxian lightly threw the drawing. It's yours.
The drawing was thrown onto the mat, but Lan Wangji didn't have any intention of picking it up.
During these days, the paper which Wei Wuxian wrote on to curse him, cajole him, apologize to him, beg him,
And other messy scribbles all ended up this way. He was used to it and didn't mind. He suddenly added, I forgot.
I need to add something else. After his words, he picked up the paper and his brush, and added a few strokes. He glanced at the drawing then,
The actual person, and fell toward the ground in laughter. Lan Wangji put down the book and saw that Wei Wuxian added a flower.
onto the drawing, where the side of his head was.
The corners of his lips seemed to have twitched.
Wei Wuxian crawled up and spoke before him. Pathetic, right? I just know that you're gonna say pathetic.
Can't you switch to something else, or add another word to it? Lan Wangji replied coldly, extremely pathetic.
Wei Wuxian clapped his hands. So you really added another word to it.
Thank you. Lan Wangji turned his gaze away, picked up the book which he put on
The desk, and opened it again. He only took one look at before he held the book away, as if he was burnt by fire.
He was initially reading a Buddhist text, but when he had looked at the
Page flipped open, he was presented with naked, intertwining figures.
intolerable to his eye, the book that he was reading was substituted with a pornographic book.
Its cover disguised as a Buddhist text.
Even someone without a brain would have guessed who had done the deed.
It must have been done when somebody took the opportunity.
That opened up when his attention turned to the drawing, let alone the fact that Wei Wuxian didn't even bother to cover it up.
Slapping the table as he laughed hysterically. Ha 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 ha. As the book was thrown on the ground, Lan Wangji seemed as if he was escaping from snakes or scorpions, falling back to the corner of the library pavilion in less than a second. He roared with rage. Wei Ying!
Wei Wuxian almost rolled under the desk from laughter, raising a hand with much difficulty. Here, I'm here. Lan Wangji swiftly drew his sword, bitchin'.
Ever since they had met, Wei Wuxian had never seen him appear so discomposed.
He hastily grabbed his own sword,
drawing his sword so that a third of
the blade was out. He reminded Lan Wangji, manners, second master. Lan, what's your manners?
I brought my sword today as well. If we start fighting, would your library pavilion be fine?
He knew that Lan Wangji would be shamed into anger,
so he went out of his way to carry his sword for self-defense, so that he wouldn't be accidentally stabbed to death.
The blade of Lan
Wangji's sword pointed at him.
Fire could almost be seen sprouting from his pair of light-colored eyes. What sort of person are you?
Wei Wuxian responded. What sort of person could I be? A man.
Lan Wangji lashed out. You have no shame.
Wei Wuxian, do I need to be ashamed about this?
Don't tell me you've never seen something like this before.
I don't believe you.
Lan Wangji's weak point was that he didn't know how to argue. After a moment of silently holding back, he pointed his sword at Wei Wuxian.
He spoke with a frigid face. You, go outside.
We have fought before.
Wei Wuxian shook his head a couple of times, pretending to be docile.
Nope, nope.
Didn't you know, young Master Lan?
Fighting without permission is prohibited in the cloud recesses.
He proceeded to pick up the book which was thrown away, but Lan
Wangji went before him, snatching it in his hand.
Wei Wuxian quickly
guessed that he was going to use this as evidence to report him. He deliberately spoke. Why are you grabbing it? I thought that you didn't
want to read it. Now you do.
Actually, even if you want to read it,
you don't have to fight for it. I borrowed it exclusively for you anyways. Now that you've seen my porn, you've become my friend.
We can continue to exchange opinions, and Lan Wangji's whole face turned white. He spoke one word at a time. I will not read it. Wei Wuxian continued to distort the facts. If you won't read it, why did you grab it?
Secretly keeping it?
You can't do that.
I borrowed this from someone else.
So I'd have to return it after you read it. Hey, don't come here. You're too close.
I feel nervous.
Let's talk nicely. You're not gonna hand this in, are you?
Hand it in to whom?
Old. Your uncle? Second young Master Lan. Do you think that you can let the elders see this?
He'd definitely think that you already read it. With a face as thin as yours, you'd be so ashamed that you'd die.
Lan Wangji filled his right hand with spiritual energy,
and the book broke into thousands of millions of pieces, fluttering downward. As Wei Wuxian saw that he successfully provoked Lan Wangji to
the point that the evidence was destroyed, he finally felt relieved,
and spoke with fake regret. What a waste.
Then, he picked up a piece of paper which had fallen on his hair,
raising it up to show the fuming, pale-faced Lan Wangji. Lan Zhan, everything about you is great, except that you like to throw things everywhere.
Tell me, how many wads of paper have you thrown onto the ground in these past few days? Today, you aren't even satisfied with throwing
paper wads anymore, and instead ripped paper. You ripped it, so you clean it up yourself.
I'm not gonna help.
Of course, he had never helped anyway.
Lan Wangji tried again and again to put up with him,
but he couldn't do it anymore.
He thundered, "Get lost."
Wei Wuxian spoke. Well, look at you, Lan Zhan. Everyone says that you're a gentleman of excellence, a bright pearl in the world, carrying yourself with incomparable courtesy. So it seems that this is all there is. Didn't you know that causing noise is prohibited in the cloud recesses?
And you actually told me to get lost. Is this the first time that you used this phrase on somebody? Lan Wangji drew his sword and went at him.
Wei Wuxian hurriedly upped onto the windowsill. Get lost it is then. Getting lost is my best skill.
It's not necessary for you to see me out. He jumped down the library pavilion, laughing like a maniac as he barged into the forest. There was already a group of people waiting for him.
Enai Huaizan asked.
How did it go?
Did he read it?
What was he like?
Wei Wuxian replied. What was he like?
Ha!
Didn't you guys hear that loud shout he gave? Enai Huaizan was full of admiration. I heard it. He told you to get lost.
Wei Xiong, it was my first time hearing Lan Wangji tell someone to get lost. How did you do it? Satisfaction was plastered all over Wei Wuxian's face.
Good thing that I helped him achieve this first.
You all saw it, didn't you?
The self-restraint and etiquette that second young Master Lan was
praised so strongly for were all weak and useless against me. Jiang Cheng scolded with a darkened expression.
What are you proud of?
What is there to be proud of with this?
Do you think that it's a glorious thing to be told by someone to get lost?
You bring so much shame upon our sect.
Wei Wuxian spoke. I really wanted to apologize to him, but he never paid attention to me. He silenced me for so many days.
So what's wrong with me having a little fun with him?
I presented him the book with a nice intention.
Huaizheng Sheng,
what happened to your treasured pawn was really a pity.
I didn't even get to finish it. It was so good. Lan Zhan definitely doesn't understand proper
relationships.
I gave it to him.
Yet he was still unhappy. It's such a waste of that face of his. Enai Huaizan blurted.
It's not a pity at all. You can have as many as you want.
Jiang Cheng sneered.
You've seriously offended both Lan Wangji and Lan Jiren. Just wait for your death tomorrow. Nobody's gonna bury your corpse.
Wei Wuxian waved his hands, putting his arm around
Jiang Cheng's shoulders. Who cares, as long as I tease him first.
You've already buried my corpse so many times.
So what's wrong with once more? Jiang Cheng responded with a kick. Shoo, shoo, shoo. Next time, if you do such a thing, don't let me know. Don't ask me to watch either. Note section
1. To see the clouds disperse and the moon appear means to finally see results after being patient and waiting for a long time.
The nickname Second Brother Lan will appear quite a lot of times in the future. The literal translation is Second Older Brother Lan, and is meant to be said in a jokingly way.
3. To forget about the pain after the cut heals means that one quickly
forgets about the things they should learn from a punishment.